And welcome to Tech Load. Sandra Spencer here, lined up for you for the next hour. Tech headlines, news, info, music and insights on the world of product design, manufacturing, distribution and marketing. What does it take to get a startup idea out of your head, onto paper and into the hands of consumers? When you're looking to solve a problem and you can't easily find the right product and solution, have you thought if only? And what if you took the challenge and journey to solve the problem for yourself and others? What would that startup journey look like? Coming up, an entrepreneur who is on the tech design journey of bringing a novel product to market. We're going to welcome Shannon Gilland, a serial entrepreneur who's now launching her latest startup product, Pronto Bottle, the world's first self-sanitizing baby bottle. A warm welcome. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Sandra. Thanks for having me on.
Now, it's often quoted, necessity is the mother of invention. This will hit home. Tell us about your startup product, Pronto Bottle, that you're developing.
Not a problem at all. Thank you. Yes, quite literally the mother of all invention, as I'm sure quite a few mumpreneurs out there have discovered when they have their first child. So I discovered the issue when I decided, or actually came across the problem of not being able to breastfeed, and then wound up having to do the bottle feeding process.
And that was traumatic on a number of different levels, not just a practical level.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background's originally in entrepreneurship, so the first thing I did was actually go about solving the pain point for me, which was actually having to go through that washing and sanitizing process.
And how long would that sometimes take?
It takes half an hour each time you decide to do a run, which is, washing, sanitizing, taking them out, pre-boiling water to fill them all.
So when you add all that up in a day and a night.
Yeah, so you wind up spending probably about an hour doing that process. That's if you're efficient. If you're not efficient, it takes a lot longer. So just, and I also went up, running out of bottles while I was travelling too, which is probably a complete nightmare.
So you're travelling sometimes with the baby?
Yeah. So my partner actually works a fair distance from home and we only had one car. So at that stage I had to really be well organised to be able to travel.
And you just thought, this is not possible. There has to be another way.
No, that's it. So, and that's where the sort of mother of invention came in.
Now, what thoughts went through your head when you asked yourself, what if this problem could be solved? How did you deal with any of that? How can I do this thoughts?
The first thing for me is I'm naturally a problem solver. So the first thing I do is actually go and research. So I research and see what currently exists on the market, who's out there, what are they doing, does anything exist in parallel kind of industries, and then also going on to actually speak to other parents and see what is their problem. Just because it's mine doesn't mean that everybody else is having that. So a major part of me discovering whether I could solve it or not was actually speaking to other parents and seeing how they were currently solving that problem.
And what sort of things were you finding out that you're all on the same page? It was really difficult.
Oh my God, it was really difficult. The amount of creative and amazing ways that parents were solving travelling with bottles, just it boggled the mind. From adding in extra bottles and extra tools and extra bags, and I was just like,
so that actually adds another layer of complication. You could fix the problem using other people's tips and tricks, but actually, which way do you go?
Yeah, absolutely. It was quite interesting to look into the minds of other parents, and maybe it was the sleep deprivation that caused a lot of the problem too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you took a positive approach in the fact that you identified a problem, you wanted to solve the problem, you communicated with others, collected data, intel, did the research, and continued to gain some confidence in the fact that, hey, I am actually onto something.
Yeah, absolutely. It's when I started seeing the responses, because I sort of did blog posts on Facebook into mothers groups and parenting groups and just said how they're solving it. And I saw all the weird and quirky ways. I then went out and actually interviewed parents. I felt like a stalker. I sat in libraries and stalked mums and dads that had their babies with them during story time.
You just pulled out the mic.
Oh my God. So I'm sorry.
Pulled out the pen.
Yeah. If you're one of those parents, I'm really, really sorry.
It's all worth it. We have the Pronto Bottle.
Yeah, that's it. So, yeah. And then when I started interviewing people there and started hearing about how they were going about it and the issues they were having, I knew that I was getting onto something because I kept hearing the same thing over and over again. So, and that's when I started designing an actual solution to that problem. Yeah.
And how would you describe where your product is at the moment? Like, what is it about your product that you're starting to develop that is in development that will solve the problem? What did you develop?
So we developed a self-sanitizing baby bottle. So what it quite literally means is that you don't need to sanitize this before you leave home. You quite literally wash it once, and you can either throw it in your bag empty, or you can pre-fill it with water with no need to pre-sanitize that water, so pre-boil it. So you've only got that one bottle with you. Press the button and it actually sanitizes itself whilst you're travelling. And the stage that we're at with that at the moment is we're actually developing our first functioning prototype right now as we speak. Mm-hmm. And once that's completed, we'll then go through the process of actually lab testing that to make sure it functions as we intend. Mm-hmm. And then from there, it's into the hands of potential customers to get them to test it. You know?
Mm-hmm. So you have to take it step by step and go through the right processes so that it is actually a product that you can sell and you can distribute to consumers and to manufacturers and retailers.
Yes, safely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's key empowerment. And so with the baby bottle, with the Pronto Bottle, is it just does one sanitation process? Is that, and then you have to re-kit it up?
Interesting. So the way it actually works is you pre-wash it before you leave home, and then imagine you're out for 6 or 7 hours with your baby and you've done a feed. You literally walk up to a tap in a kitchen or even a public bathroom. It sounds scary, but you can rinse it out, refill it, press a button, and it sanitizes the teat, the bottle, and the water at the same time.
And how many resanitation processes can the one Pronto Bottle go?
It can do 6 feeds while you're travelling, so that's
great.
That's 12 hours worth of feeding.
Yeah, and so if you need more, then you'd make sure that you have more than one Pronto Bottle.
That would be ideal for us. I don't know if parents would like that concept. But look, it's USB rechargeable, so everyone kind of carries around, a little charger with them now for their phones. So you there's so many charge points now, whether it's in your bag and it's portable, or in your car, or if you're in the library somewhere or a cafe. So it's quite easy just to stop and recharge the product as well before you get home.
And so what is the sanitisation process in detail? Is it chemical? Is it light? Is it
we wanted to stay away from the chemical thing, obviously, because of residues and that kind of thing. You don't want that, obviously, anywhere near your baby. We're actually using UVC light, and UVC light's actually been used in the medical and dental field for years and years and years. And most recently, we started to see that come into consumer products. And so we've taken that now, as the technology's gotten smaller, and we can actually now put that into a baby bottle lid, which is what we've done. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there's been some, this technology has existed, and you're using that technology and advancing it for your product.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's the major takeaway you've learnt, to date?
Oh, my goodness, major takeaway.
It's a journey.
Such a journey through this process. I think the first thing, if I could go back and tell myself something, I would have found myself in a better financial position before I started this process.
Because it costs you more on the financial front than you can imagine.
Yeah, it does. And it's
and plus it takes longer. The time frames are always kind of longer sometimes than you would envision.
Absolutely. And there winds up being things that push the timeline out and wind up pushing costs out that you could never, ever kind of envision or estimate for. So the better position you are up front financially, the better you are obviously in the long run. So, and that also comes down to the practicality of the better you are financially to start off with. It means you take funding later on, which means you give away less equity later on, or to start off with, if that makes sense too. So that's another thing.
That's right, because there's different constraints and things that you accept with different types of funding.
Yes.
So the funding isn't just for you to fund yourself and your own lifestyle while you develop.
No. I think any entrepreneur knows that you don't pay yourself for a very long time when you're doing this process, because all the money goes into the business. So,
So let's have a look at the different funding stages you went through to get to this point.
Absolutely. So initially, obviously, you start paying out for everything yourself as much as you can, and that kind of gets down to what we did, was where you start maxing out your credit cards. And then you get into what's typically known as the friends, family and fools round, and it doesn't quite literally mean...
I haven't heard the fools part. That's quite new for me.
It doesn't quite literally mean fools. What it stands for is the fact that when you're taking money from somebody, it means that they're happy to give money into something, but it comes with no advice. But then there's people that are happy to give money, but it comes with advice. And to be aware of that when you're actually asking for funds from
and that
people.
could be restrictive.
It can, because what you've got to realise then is if somebody starts asking a lot of questions or wants to get really involved in your business, but they don't actually know much about it, you start winding up managing that relationship more than you do on actually running your business. So, I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And then you're in-house psychologist. You're really something else. Consumer complaints.
That too. So then you go into, generally it's into then your angel round. But something that people don't quite often look at in terms of funding is also when you're doing pitch events. So you can look at them in terms of funding for winning office space, winning training, winning small portions of funding as well that don't include equity dilution. So that's a portion of your funding strategy as well. Then getting into accelerator programs before you actually go into your angel round.
That's a lot of work because for for the accelerator rounds, like what sort of paperwork and documentation are they looking for?
It's very intensive. So I actually wound up into an accelerator specifically med-based called MedTech Actuator. And they actually come with a portion of funds and a portion of equity taking as well. But that was well balanced in terms of the programs, like 18 months, 6 months intensive upfront, really specific to the med space. Further on then you get into, VC rounds and in your Series A and Series B, which is, a lot further down the track. Yeah.
And so was there any part of the funding stages or processes that you enjoyed more than others? Is that too strong a word, enjoy? And were some funding parts easy? Was there anything easy about getting funding?
When I saw the money hit my bank account.
That was probably great relief. Yeah, that was actually, easy.
That was the easy part. Every step has a workload to it, whether you're applying for a pitch or applying for funds from friends and family, but definitely the sort of Accelerator program is a lot of paperwork.
I can imagine.
It can take 2 or 3 months depending on how organised you are or depending on how much paperwork you've actually done prior to that, because some people don't even think of their business plans, their financial projections, valuing their business before they get to that stage, doing financial projections, all that kind of stuff. So if you haven't...
No, and did you have a team working on that, or really a lot of it was just up to yourself?
That was just a lot of it was up to myself, and then also... hiring, I had a virtual CFO that I was working with as well that works as a part of my business. So,
okay, and where was that? I suppose it doesn't make any difference where they're located, does it?
They're Melbourne-based.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So a lot of the companies that I've hired are actually Melbourne-based, yeah.
And did you have much contact with the virtual?
Yes, yeah. So we actually had face-to-face meetings and everything. They're Melbourne-based as well, which is great.
Yeah, so that's a good combination.
Yeah, absolutely. So we could do...
And it's cost-effective, I guess.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's the biggest thing about, hiring contractors around your business as a startup is that you can switch on and switch off as, your funding comes in and goes out. So when you're spending, you kind of need to back off a little bit. And people that are in this space understand that that's what startups do as well, because we've got to be so careful with our funds to make sure that we get to the point where we've actually developed that product.
Because how many funds have you had now?
So how many funding stages? So if I take into the friends, so probably three different funding rounds.
That's right. And how many, is it likely you'll need one more round before you
Definitely.
Okay.
So I'm actually currently working on applications to angels at the moment for that next funding round for later in the year, because it's quite a long process as well. It's not like I do an application now and then suddenly I've got the money. That's a 6-month process. It's quite a long time.
So you must have got, and so how long have you been working on the Pronto Bottle? Like from the first, I need to solve this problem, to like now? A few years?
Yeah, close on 2 years now.
And that's what it takes, the journey.
Yeah,
and you must have had to, you've had so many challenges along the way and new skills that you've developed and are developing still.
Absolutely. And you're always swapping skills as well. It's not like, my background before this was also in project management and you're working for one company doing one thing, whereas this, you're working for yourself, which is one company, yes, but then you're learning 20 or 30 different jobs at one stage, and you're constantly swapping
and wearing
and
so
rolling.
many different hats.
All the time.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's no wonder it takes a long time to do this.
And some people would say, as we played the music earlier, it's just crazy.
It is.
I think we're going to have Amy Winehouse coming up with a bit of rehab. It seems quite
Excellent.
fitting, really. We'll be back on some of the highlights and not so much on the lowlights of your journey today. We haven't got time.
I think anybody who's an entrepreneur will know what you're talking about there. The biggest highlights are, the first one was winning my first pitch. So there was a pitch in February last year that I did. It was the very first time I actually pitched the product at all, and in front of
You must be
audience.
nervous. Did you have parts of your body shaking?
Oh my God, I was shaking that hard. I actually dropped my bottle. I actually walked up on stage with the prop. I dropped it. My voice was shaky, and I thought I did so poorly. I actually walked away from the stage and went, well, that's the end of that, and went and grabbed myself a wine.
I need some actor training.
And then they sort of came back later and said, hey, by the way, you actually won. And I was actually away from the stage. I couldn't actually accept it because I thought I'd lost.
And what do you think it is? So while by all accounts, not necessarily the most perfect delivery, but what was it about your pitch and presentation that you think actually worked for you?
They said to me the fact that I had such a clear problem and solution delivery. Yeah. I think that's something that a lot of the entrepreneurs, when they're pitching products, struggle with delivering. Maybe where they're coming from tech backgrounds or thinking about too much on a specific feature rather than the overall.
To bring it down to a simple line, to the basics, is sometimes difficult for people because they think they have to embellish or they have to decorate or dress up an idea to make it more important. When in actual fact, it's the simplicity that actually
nails it.
is the best.
Yeah, there's not much you can fluff about when you've got 90 seconds.
Hey, we've got time in the show for this 90-second pitch. Do you remember? What was the opening line? Come on, what was the opening line? Now you've got a chance. I can actually coach you too on the delivery because I have a background in that.
And then I'll fail for a second time delivering my pitch and I'll walk away from the microphone.
You also, previously when we were speaking, you mentioned that you were involved in a crowdfunding pitch. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we decided to go into a crowdfunding campaign last year. And that's a long tail project, right? So that takes about 3 to 4 months in pre-prep, actually doing the crowdfunding campaign and post-prep. We went into it and it failed miserably. If you look at in terms of we didn't raise the funding that we were looking for.
Did you raise something but nowhere near it?
Yeah, that's it, correct. Yeah, nowhere near it. So
how much were you looking for?
We were looking to raise naively 200K. And that would get us through what we thought would be manufacturing and actually sending out between 5,000 to 10,000 bottles, depending on how much we actually raised. We were too soon. We were too early. We didn't take in too early, as in we hadn't had the product down into actually, past the prototype stage. You know, so and then we didn't take into consideration the purchase to decision ratio. So mums think they can breastfeed until they can't, and then I've got to go get a bottle. So they obviously want to be able to pick up that bottle as soon as they can. For us, we're like, yeah, purchase this now. You're pre-planning to do a bottle, and we'll send it to you in 9 months. So
no.
Perfect for pregnancy, but not
they got a lot
for...
of things to deal with when they're pregnant.
But look, we learnt a lot from the process, even though it didn't work. We learnt a lot about the consumers. We learnt a lot about what their thinking was in terms of they wanted a brand also that they could trust because it's a baby product. And also Australian consumers have never come across UVC being used in this way before. The Asia market's very used to it. They use sterilisation cabinets for their bottles. But for the Australian market, it was very, very unknown. So we had to spend a lot of time educating people, and it's something we didn't think that we had to do. So, yeah, we learnt a lot.
Yeah, wow. And so, that was almost, I suppose, every step, whether it's winning or failing, you're gathering intel to take your product and to the next stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is just to remember to actually digest and actually learn. Learn from your mistakes.
So what challenges are you expecting going forward? How do you think you might deal with any weaknesses that you see?
The next challenges for us will actually be in ensuring we set up our manufacturing correctly. So currently we're looking at launching into the APAC region, so Australia and also Asia. So looking at China, which is pretty much a hot topic at the moment and on everybody's minds. So for us, obviously, there's a lot of risk around that we need to be taking into account, and how we actually approach that market. That's the biggest risk for us at the moment. Yeah.
And so what sort of testing have you done to date? I think you mentioned it earlier, but if you can talk us through the different types of testing and how you go about getting a certification for sales of the product in Australia and globally.
We've done testing in terms of parents actually handling and dealing with our base product. So that's called usability testing. What that tells us is, have we created the product in the right way that parents actually understand and it's easy for them and doesn't make their life more difficult. And then you get to a point where we actually have a functioning prototype, which is the stage we're at right now. And then we put that into labs, and the lab will actually test whether or not that UV light is sanitizing the teat, is it sanitizing the water, and whether or not it will do that after you've gone through 6 feeds and you've just rinsed the bottle.
And they won't just test it once; they have to test it many times in different conditions.
Yes, yep, absolutely. And then in post that, once we've gotten the yes, this works as intended, we'll then go through again, and we'll actually then test with lactation consultants. We'll test with maternal child health nurses. We'll also speak to our influencers as well and say, general parents, how does this work for you? Is it solving your problem? Just again, it's really good to get that feedback all the way through.
And is it I suppose it is quite a lengthy process to get the certification and the approval to sell the product, and that is something that the different labs where you do the testing talk you through and guide you through. Is that right?
It is. It depends on what certifications you're going through. So if you're looking specifically into medical products, there's different classifications. If we go into a class 1, which is considered a sterilising product, we can use the terminology sterilisation, and it gets quite nitty-gritty where you have to go through certain registries, TGA, FDSO, get all that testing and certification done. That takes longer. So for the moment, we're staying away from that. We're not doing that, but we're going through the actual lab testing for it. And we're saying that our product actually sanitizes, and it does kill germs and bacteria to a certain level, and it does it to the same level as your current steam sterilizer does. So that's what we're doing at the moment. Yeah.
And has a lot of time at this stage gone into, any of the branding?
Yeah, a lot of times going to the branding.
And if you're going to do the APAC, I suppose you may have to do some other branding for that market. Is that
Yeah, 100%.
correct?
So we actually did our first lot of branding just prior to our crowdfunding campaign. And initially we were looking at just launching within Australia. So that was focused just around that market. Whereas now looking at the Asia region, we need to be very mindful of cultural influences from the different countries there, and ensure that our brand reflects not just our ethos, but also it doesn't conflict with what the Asian market are expecting in a product. What might look good for us may not translate very well to the Asian market. So that's the strategy we're going into next as well.
Because there's a whole lot of things to consider.
There is.
The language that's used, colours, symbols.
Yeah, and just the general gist of what you're trying to say. So not just the language, but does it actually translate into the sense and feeling that you're trying to get across? You've got to be careful of. Yeah. Yeah.
So how big is your team at this stage?
You already know the answer to this one. That's why you're laughing.
Sorry. The Pronto Bottle team.
It's a team of one.
You said that with such confidence. That's it. You're going through to the next stage.
Yeah, so it's a team of one, but I've hired the important people around me, so people who know a hell of a lot about what they're doing that I don't know. And that includes, marketing people, branding people, finance people, people that know things about actually selling your product. So people who know who to speak to in terms of wholesale strategies, distribution, all that kind of thing. Also, obviously, the design team, they know a heck of a lot more than I do. I have a 3D background as well, but they've done a lot of work on this to ensure that it's doing X, Y, and Z.
Totally, and all these, industries, sub-industries, they're all going through their own process of development. So, yeah, you do need to hand certain things over to people who are specialists in that area at that time.
Yeah, very much so.
And so you're looking to do wholesale, retailing and direct consumer market. And why is that? Why did you come to that sort of conclusion?
It needs to be a pretty multifaceted approach if you're going to get into the market quickly. I think selling just to the consumer, you spend a lot of time and effort on branding and marketing your product. And when you're doing that, you might as well be doing a multifaceted approach in terms of getting it into, pharmacies, large chain retailers, boutique stores.
Because they'll be helping your marketing and distribution efforts.
Absolutely. And
on their budget.
Yeah, definitely. And look, the harder a consumer finds it to find your product, the less likely you are to have it launched successfully. So the more, the easier it is for them to find it in multiple areas. It's obviously a lot better for your consumer and a lot less frustrating too. Yeah.
Now, how much research was involved, and how did you go about the research to substantiate, moving forward with the Pronto Bottle and the product design?
Oh my God, I think I couldn't even put down in hours how much research I've done on this product. So there's a lot of research in the front end when you're first looking at this. So I had my problem. I then went into investigating what was currently out there, what technologies currently existed, looking at, do those products solve what I'm thinking that it's actually going to solve, and then going, no, that doesn't solve it. What's the next technology? So you spend a lot of time in the beginning actually researching. And that's not just about the technology. You also do a lot of time researching with parents and your possible consumer. And you spend a lot of time setting up campaigns to get feedback from parents, to build the trust, to get them to talk to you, and then going back and then reconfirming when you've got, okay, hey, I've done this and I've changed that. Does this now solve that problem? Oh, no, it doesn't. Okay, well, what do you think about this?
It doesn't sound like in this space you had any time to really have any negativity, because if you did, you're probably eating, sleeping, breathing, dreaming about the Pronto Bottle or what's to be, and you really wouldn't have the energy to have too much negativity, I would imagine.
You'd think so. Like, we had a bit of negativity in terms of if you talk about, failures before, when that crowdfunding failed, it was a huge knock. It was a massive knock to not just to my ego, but to my spirit, and just going, oh my God, what have I done? Consumers clearly, they don't want it. What is going on? And I think it took me, a good 2 or 3 weeks to get myself righted again and to feel like I was back in the headspace to nail it and to keep going.
And how did you do that? Did you get any mentorship in that, or did you get any assistance with that? Or did you just pull yourself out of that mindset yourself?
To be honest, the best thing was actually my husband. My husband's been an amazing support through this. So he's been the one that hands me the glass of wine and says it's going to be okay.
It's not this is, disclaimer, drinking is not the only thing you can grab to help.
No, of course, that's it. And exercise. And also meditation.
Exercise, yes, meditation.
Absolutely, there was
changing your neural pathways.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of things that you can do. Going and catching up with your friends, going for walks in the forest. I'm lucky to live in a place like King Lake, which is beautiful,
Getting close to nature.
Yes, absolutely.
Making yourself sleep.
Yes.
If you can do that.
You don't do when you're an entrepreneur.
But really important, because to have new ideas and to build on those ideas, you actually sometimes need a state of peace and relaxation for that new energy to kick-start new ways of solving problems.
Absolutely. And also getting mentors on board as well. So I had a business mentor pretty much almost from the beginning of last year anyway.
Oh, and how did you go about finding a mentor?
It was actually the strangest random combination of coincidences. My neighbour actually was one of the founding people for the Swinburne's Entrepreneurship and Innovation almost 20 years ago. And he started and founded, 7, 8, 9 different businesses of his own. And he's mentored people in business and also in personal development as well. So I was lucky enough to meet him when I had my daughter strapped to me when I was going for a walk one day, and just got chatting about what I was doing. And he's like, oh, we just, started catching up over coffees. And
so you didn't really know each other before this conversation?
No, that's it. So So he's been an amazing support as well, just saying to me, have you thought of this? Have you really dug into the details of that? And, what are you thinking about here? And
he's right next door. He's probably pulling the blinds down, taking his phone off, talking with his people about having to move house.
You say that he's actually selling his house at the moment. I wonder if that's
why. No, I mean, that just sounds like a fantastic serendipitous event and very timely. And of course, it takes more than just a great idea. Yeah. It takes the wherewithal. It takes an ensemble, a skill set of skills you don't even know that you have, that you can't even believe that you could develop, and then learning how to fail, and then having also opening it up to have the right people and the right things and actions and activities to take place at the right time, because timing is everything.
And sometimes it feels like a very magical process at times where you can try and plan things and you feel like you're just hitting against a wall, and at other times it all seems to unfold beautifully, and you just think, how in the heck did that happen? Yeah.
Wow. Yep. How can that happen? How can it happen that we have a break and then we can work it out? Tech Load, and we're in discussions about the Pronto Bottle, having a look at development, ideas, distribution, manufacturing, but of course we won't be doing all that in the remaining 10 minutes. But we have got a few more questions to ask. So, Shannon, what was an early milestone for you when you felt, I can do this? And when did you say, okay, that's it, I've got it, I've got the golden egg?
I actually remember the moment. I was sitting in front of my computer. We had just completed a bunch of interviews with customers, and I had this strange little epiphany moment. And this whole time I hadn't been trying to develop a self-sanitizing bottle, right? The idea came about looking at all the information we'd gathered from the interviews, people carrying all this stuff, having to sanitize all this stuff. And I just had this thought, what if the ultimate thing was you could travel with one bottle and that bottle was empty? And then that was my first epiphany moment of going, oh my God, I think that's it. And in researching whether that was even possible, and in finding the tech, and in looking at the tech and going, it's being implemented in other products, this has got to be possible. And that's that the thing. It. That was the moment.
That was like the stars aligned. All the work that you'd been doing. How many months into this process was it? Like weeks or
that would have been
a year?
That would have been 6 months part-time into the process, and like just in that first initial problem solving, like problem discovery, Yeah,
and all the things just came together, and that was like that momentum moment.
Keeping in mind, I was actually looking after a 1.5-year-old at this stage, so it was part-time doing that and part-time doing research. So
you like to have a challenge,
always.
And so, tell us a bit how your background, in South Africa has helped you to develop a problem-solving mindset.
Absolutely. So, I was born on a farm in South Africa, and we were sort of, 20 k's from the nearest town, and there was this Afrikaans saying, but I'll say it in English, and it translates to farmer makes a plan, because you couldn't just go off to the store to buy something to fix whatever it had broken. You quite literally had to pull together the resources and the assets you had right there and then.
Because it's too far away.
Absolutely, yeah. And because the shops there, we had the tiniest town. It'd be like going, I can't even think of a town, like somewhere really, really little that didn't have all the fancy stuff you do now. And that was sort of instilled in me since I was a kid. And ever since then, even my mindset, I've always been a problem solver as a kid. And that's gone into my work, getting into project management, which has been perfect for me, because that's what project managers do.
Totally. So you were working on a lot of tech sort of startups in project management before you started work on the Pronto Bottle. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually moved to Melbourne from Adelaide after I first arrived from South Africa. And I came here to study a bachelor's in animation, but I didn't fall into an animator's role. I actually found a project manager's role, and that then sort of went into me starting my first business with my business partner, and we started a mobile development studio and started working on client work. And then I sold my portion of the business to him, and actually went and worked for Electronic Arts, which is a major global games development studio.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, and I worked as a project manager on one of their titles, and that gave me a lot of experience.
And working with lots of different industry professionals and people with different backgrounds.
Absolutely. It taught me a lot about just managing teams, managing projects, workflows, that kind of thing, which has been really good for the business that I'm working on now. From there it was then studied entrepreneurship and innovation, and that was just before I had my daughter. I was actually working on a different idea then, but then I got pregnant, took the time off to spend with her, and then it was that real immediate pain point of
Every couple of hours you're reminded of this is a problem.
That's it. Why hasn't somebody solved this? Oh my God.
So what are the different stages that will be involved in bringing your product to market? So what stages have you gone through and what stages are left? Just recap on this.
Sure. There's a lot of stages that kind of come through this process. So your initial stages tend to be obviously that problem discovery, and then the solution discovery, going through doing your first lot of design work, going back doing usability testing with your customers, finding if you've got problem solution fit. So again, going through and testing that however you decide to test that. Then going and raising funds as well to get you through to a certain stage. Developing your go-to-market strategy, your business plan, and in deciding, will that be then to go through and license your product in the end? Do you want to partner with somebody, or do you actually want to go through to the manufacturing phase? So there's a lot of different approaches to the end portion of your business. And we're kind of getting to the end portion now, whether we manufacture ourselves, license, or partner with somebody.
And that's exciting. So can you describe how do you think the startup ecosystem is working in Australia?
I can probably only just talk to it as how I've experienced it, and I found it, there's a lot out happening at the moment in Melbourne specifically. There tends to be what seems like a lot of funding coming through. But depending on who you speak to, I've spoken to angels and VCs who've said, yes, there's a lot of funding coming through, and others that have said, look, there's still not enough to support the ecosystem, the growth in the ecosystem that's happening at the moment. There are so many ideas coming through, so many amazing startups that are coming through.
The money just from Australia.
Yeah,
so you're looking
just
overseas?
Australia.
So you're looking at some angel investors from overseas at the moment as well, or you will do perhaps?
I will do. So I've just gotten into another accelerator, which is specifically for Asia and Australia relationships, and a portion of that will actually be going over to China, obviously virus dependent, and actually starting conversations with investors over there to see whether or not anyone's actually interested in investing in this type of product. So,
and are the accelerator programs that you've been involved in, are they actually fast?
Fast in what terms?
In terms of progress?
Yes.
Like, it sounds like accelerator, sounds like it's some ride.
It is one hell of a ride. The program that I got into, the first one, MedTech, was a 6-month intensive program. So 1 week every month in really intense masterclasses on everything from licensing.
It's like being on like Business Big Brother or something that doesn't really exist.
Yeah, that's all right. But yeah, totally. And it's important, I think, because as a startup you can get so distracted with working on, where's my product going to go, what's this going to look like, that you forget the fundamentals of looking sometimes at the bigger picture.
So this is moving you on the different levels and stages and different fronts that you need to move on simultaneously.
Yes.
And that's what's accelerating
very much
forward,
so.
because you're not just getting stuck on the thing that you like to do or the thing that you can easily do. You're aware of everything you need to move on at the same time.
Yep, you've nailed it. Yeah, and what they try to do is line that up in a process that makes sense to you at the stage of the business you're at. So that may look like product development to start off with, then moving into a business model, then moving into manufacturing, moving into...
So it's all bespoke and custom for each individual business?
No, it's not. No. So the one I got into was MedTech, so medical technology, and it was a broad spectrum look at, if you're developing a medical device, how you would need to go about that process and classifications and requirements.
So it seems that you would want to be on the right accelerator program. Some 100%. Companies may be on the, not the best choice of accelerator program, and that could be time wasting to a point.
Absolutely. I think the accelerators do quite a good job at actually vetting people out though. So these processes, like I said before, are quite intensive, require a lot of paperwork, and they obviously vet you coming through saying, are you tech-based, are you software-based, are you hardware-based, are you medtech, are you SaaS, all of those things. So you take that obviously into account when you're applying as well.
So advice for anyone who may be out there who would like to take their first steps with a startup, what would you say?
Get yourself into an excellent, if you can, financial position before you do it. Get the support around you as soon as you can. Get a mentor as soon as you can.
Hopefully one that lives next door to you. I'm going to look for one of those. I might have to move house a few times. I have no idea. I'll put it out there. I'm going to meditate more, sleep more. It'll come.
That's where you can only try, right? So those are probably the biggest things. And then also one that I haven't mentioned so far is get into a co-working space that is within the same sort of system that you're working on, so either a tech co-working space or female-friendly business startup, whatever it is.
And that has good Friday afternoon drinks.
Oh, absolutely. And meditation. And business support. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So before we go, what excites you generally about tech?
Just the plethora of things that are coming out, the ways in which people are solving problems that I haven't even thought of, things that just make people's lives easier, either cheaper, or even things that are coming out into third world space, things that are tackling, especially at the moment, plastic and environmental impact. That's what gets me excited.
And tech that surprises you?
Tech that surprises me. Maybe because it's the space that I'm in now is the medtech space. Okay. I never thought of medtech as being sexy or interesting.
It is now. Pronto.
Yeah, that's it. But seeing the tech that's coming into it now that are just making people's lives easier is just amazing. Yeah, I love it.
Oh, thank you so much, Shannon. It's been an absolute delight. So that's the Pronto Bottle. And great to have your company here on Tech Load. Join me, Sandra Spencer, on Southern FM next week with more tech news, info and experts, Wednesdays 6 to 7 p.m.